Hey guys, welcome to Reality Check with Pranav and Avery. We decided to start doing this podcast series now that The Mole Season 2 has released because we both love reality TV. We wanted to give you our takes and I'm excited for this. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, we have a lot to talk about. The name is Reality. There's plenty of tea to be spilled, but I think Aves and I also just always love talking about this stuff off screen. So bringing this to you guys is just something that was long due, and happy to be here. Let's do this. This is going to be a long haul. This is episode 1.
These are our exposed private conversations. Like, I'm not even kidding you. Pranav and I will hop on text or even on call on Discord, whatever it is, and we will spill all of the tea that we have and we'll talk. And we were like, people want to hear this stuff. Like, they definitely want to hear what we have to say because our experience on season 1 was pretty unique. And now we get to watch other people kind of play out those same scenarios, and we want to give you our take. So
yeah. And there's
it's going to be good. I also wrote notes, so I hope you're prepared.
Do at some point. Okay. So I'm gonna whip them out, and also we've been behind the scenes, so we know a little bit of what goes on behind it all, and that's what we're excited to share with y'all because there's a production aspect to everything.
Yes, and I do have some tea that we will be spilling right at the end of this episode. So stay tuned, stick around. There will be little tidbits of tea throughout, but at the very end, I have something I want to share with you guys that hasn't been exposed on the internet yet. So
I don't even think I might know. I might not know too.
You
right?
don't know.
Yeah,
you don't know. But let's dive into episode 1.
Episode 1, we're talking The Mole, season 2.
Season 2, episode 1. All of the players are in a grass field, so similar to season 1, where we all kind of are told to go find a plane. They're told to go find an opening in the field. And these players meet up. They're saying hello to each other, and then a bomb gets dropped on them. Let me tell you, I would not want to be a part of this season's episode 1. Like, I have chills right now. Like, thinking about someone getting replaced, episode 1 is terrifying. Because we go all the way from our homes. It's like a 20-something hour journey for them to Malaysia. They're staying in a hotel room, pending, waiting to get on set, and then they might just possibly get sent home and replaced.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah, and that goes to show you the whole social experiment aspect of it, because they really just let it play out. They're they wanted to see who's going to take the leadership position. And I remember even episode 1 when we arrived at the plane and I introduced myself to you and Joy. They were clearly people started taking on roles. You can see people who were going to be the leaders naturally. Some people were more vocal, and so right out the gate you see Nish, who's my Indian brother, probably my counterpart. We'll talk about all those kind of comparisons between the cast later, but he takes on that leadership role and then immediately regrets it because you don't know what's actually gonna happen. For us, it was that plane in the opening, and they were you gotta find the clue, and we really don't know what's going on until the host arrives and tells us, wait a minute, we're about to drop a wrench in this thing and the game is about to begin, which is kind of crazy. I literally
be the leader. Never mind. He literally physically took a step backwards, and I was like, oh my, I laughed out loud. So that was
stressful. It was a stressful situation. I think he did really well. I mean, what do you think? I mean, he was pretty strategic. He really understood the lay of the land. And I mean, you don't know these people. You just met them 10 minutes ago, and all of a sudden you got to trust them to save you in the game in real time with paintball. Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
I mean, he did do a good job laying it out, but I would have never allowed people to make me the leader because, having the possibility of going home, also it just takes you completely off of the list for possibly being suspicious, because I don't think production would take the risk of allowing the mole to be in a position where they could potentially be replaced. Anything could happen. They don't have control over these intruders, or maybe they have more control than we think, but if it's real and they only give everyone 10 bullets, the risk is just way too high for them to put the mole in that position. So he actually moved to my number 1 least suspicious, absolutely could not be the mole no matter what, as soon as he accepted that role as leader.
I agree. And the easy read on that is, well, we know the production is working with the mole, which means the mole has some level of insider knowledge about what's about to go down. So the mole's not about to show up in an opening in the middle of the field and vocalize the fact that there's some sort of leader in any capacity.
Right, exactly.
They wouldn't do that. They would stay quiet. They would stay low. They would be told to specifically stay low because they know the challenge that's about to happen. So immediately Nish was like completely off my list. I was like, this guy is just a good player. I was going to root for him. I was like, here we go. Like, you know, I hope he survives in the game, you know?
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And I know he's getting a little bit of heat right now, I guess, you know, from that dynamic of, you know, claiming to be a leader. But, you know, some people are natural leaders. And honestly, even though it kind of outed him for being the mole, like, I appreciate someone who's willing to put themselves out there and actually just play the game. So I don't agree with any of the heat that he's getting. I think, you know, he's just playing the game. And honestly, he did a really great job placing people in positions that would keep him in the game, clearly, because mission 1 ends and Nish is still here.
Yeah, he's still there. And I mean, I think the game was almost designed to go till the end. You know, those slingshots didn't seem like they were going to hit anybody.
That's another thing that we talked about, is that certain groups are kind of destined to fail. Would you agree with that?
I agree. The slingshot group to me is exactly that. It's like, obviously, like, who's used a slingshot before? You're talking about like some archaic way of like throwing paintballs, and you've never really done that. And now all of a sudden you're shooting like at a person who's like running by you. The odds of that happening are very low. And then you get to like the whole like sniper being balanced on like a circular board, like carried by 3 people and being held up like on a tower that's like kind of jaded. It's like, even that's like pretty difficult. Credit to Andy. We'll talk about Andy. I mean, I love Andy's energy, right? Like, what a guy, like, there for the right reasons. I almost wish, Aves, that we had an Andy.
No, I was about to say that too. Like, I wish we had like an older, whether it was a male or a female, just like someone who's older and wiser to give like some wisdom in the group. I loved that they did that this season. I think that was something that they messed up with on season 1, to be honest.
Yeah, our ages were like what, like 20, like 24 to like 40 was like our like kind of band or something like that. And like pretty cool that they found like a 65-year-old like investigator to come out and like put in his best foot forward. And that snipe was crazy.
And it was so good.
Yeah.
I think it's time for us to spill our first little piece of tea as we talk about mission 1, because I think that from our perspective, at least, certain missions are destined to fail, or certain groups are destined to fail. I think that production sets these up in a way that is pretty impossible. So this is a little bit of tea for you guys. During mission 1 on our season, I think the group that Joy and Sandy and Osei and Samara were in, where they had the map and everyone was upset at Joy for, you know, navigating them improperly, I think that group was destined to fail. And the reason that I think that is because our group literally got guided where to go by production. You know, we had a map too, but we would go in the wrong direction and they would point. They were sitting in the trees going like, guys, go that way. And, you know, they were guiding us how to end up where we were supposed to be. Otherwise, 100% we would have gotten lost too. And I think this is a perfect example of that, because the people who were in the group with the slingshots, I think that group was kind of destined to fail. It's like, could they have figured it out? Sure. But did they? No, not a single one of them was able to hit these intruders sprinting with a slingshot that was so slow and so poorly designed. So that's a little bit of tea for you guys.
Right. I agree. I think I was on the water team. We didn't get help from production, which was an interesting thing, but they were always surrounding us, and like they, I don't know. I think we were the group that was like meant to succeed. Our challenge was just hard enough where like they knew that we would be able to kind of figure it out. There's just like a crate kind of hidden in the water in a stream. We just had to find the stream, and like it was pretty simple thereafter. Yeah, so like and this is a common theme, I think, throughout the mole. You'll see like a group that's like kind of like just has a task that like they probably can't do. And then you have a group that will probably succeed. And then you have a group that's probably going to like have to take a little bit of help here and there, realistically speaking, to get through. awesome first challenge.
Yes,
A lot of parallels to our season. And then like right after the challenge, they go to that mansion in Malaysia, similarly to how we did in the forest on the helicopters, and we land in. They go to this beautiful mansion, and the first episode kind of like, now it seems systematically is like it's like one challenge and you live right after that.
Yeah.
So you really don't know anyone. So
yeah, they're like the James Bond house in the middle of the Daintree Forest in Australia and the James Bond house in atop of a hill in Malaysia. Love that.
Love it.
So then the next mission is the phone call mission. And we see that the people in the group trust the most Muna, Tony, which is interesting that they trust, and Deanna.
Yeah.
Which I agree with Deanna. I don't know if I would agree with Tony, and I would never, ever, ever agree with Muna as most trustworthy. She seems like a sweet girl for sure, but she definitely seems like someone who is focused on the game and in it to win it, or the mole.
Muna is an awesome character. I'm sure we'll talk about her for a long time to come, because she is vocal, she's intelligent, she's hard to read. She seems to garner trust of people even when she does something sus, as we saw. Tony kind of derailed that phone mission, right? Because like people trust him, but then like all of a sudden at the table, maybe he wanted to draw some suspicion to himself, and he like messes up whether he said 1 or 2, and all of a sudden Muna's off the hook. Like Muna doesn't have to explain.
No, I think he is literally just that, like, not all that.
But he saved Muna, right? He saved Muna of all that suspicion. Yeah. So interesting. It kind of covers the tracks for the mole if Muna ends up being the mole. I think people trusted Tony because, like, honestly, to his own admission, he said that he was dumb as rocks. So everyone was kind of like, all right, Tony, if you say that you're that, and then if you act like a duck and you call yourself a duck and you quack like a duck, then maybe you are a duck. And then like they just like trust him to do that thing, you know? So and he did the right thing. So I mean, whatever. But
yes. But either way, it seems that Muna gets away with it until the next mission starts, in which we see two people on two different boat mission teams. And one boat has all of the people that were nominated for the phone call mission, and the other boat has all of the people who weren't nominated for, this phone call mission. And we see this scene where that boat is like, somebody on the other boat took $5,000 out of the pot. And then you see the people that are on the boat going, hey, it's one of us. And interestingly, Ryan goes, I think it was Muna. And that stood out to me because I was like, how does she know? Like, did they have some sort of private conversations that we missed out on? But I was like, that's so interesting that Ryan seems to have called that out and she's aware of it.
I think I agree. You're right. Ryan is Casey. Well, actually, we'll talk about Ryan actually, because Ryan is a very interesting character because she plays the game a lot more under the radar than other players. Like she just naturally plays it a little bit calmer, a little bit under the radar, a little bit, I can tell like there's a little bit more analysis going on in Ryan's head throughout. She's always thinking. Credit to Ryan. I also think that phone booth was kind of weird. Like they were all like standing outside the phone booth. Like, I mean, and it's like a 1 or a 2. Like I was like, and they were like letting them like say their piece as they walked out. They were like, I pressed 1. And then like people have like a judge on like whether they believe that person. And like Dee's emotional. So like you know that like Dee like did the right thing. And then you have like Tony who's like trying to make that impression. And like Muna is like always with her face is so like expressive. It's always like so like, and I think that's kind of maybe what gave it away to Ryan, but credit to Ryan for figuring it out. And let's call the episode 2 is like Paradise Cove, right? I mean, for us, right? The parallels are crazy.
Yeah, it's like the same thing. I think we had a mission where one team was on a boat and the other one was on a seaplane. They have a mission where one team is in the water and the other team is trying to find something in the forest and building a raft. Either way, very, very similar scenarios. And then we see that, let's see, where are we at? So
Muna stood out to me that I don't know. Did she stand out to you? It was the call from Muna for big, like, I think our raft is big enough. Like Andy's like tying it. Muna's like, I think the raft is big enough. And Sean's kind of like, are you sure this raft is big enough? And then all of a sudden, like Muna kind of like drives the force with that and gives a side eye to like the camera. And then like all of a sudden they're cutting the raft and it's not a very big raft. Like they could have made a bigger raft, but in my opinion, it looked pretty small. And I think credit to Muna for making that happen. Kind of suspicious.
Yeah, but they end up succeeding and they get the raft all the way across. And Andy is calling out that he thinks that someone might have sabotaged because those barrels that were underneath could have been easily slid out. But to me, it honestly just seemed like the water was deep. And in my opinion, the mole probably would have been prompted to sabotage sometime during the mission, not now. And something that's interesting to think about is when the mole is prompted to sabotage, it's during whatever's happening. It's not like these whimsical, oh my gosh, the raft is actually floating, let's make it sink. Like the mole doesn't do things that are like so outlandish like that. They are prompted on exactly when and how to sabotage to fly under the radar. So we would have seen this either if the mole was in the water, we would have, seen the sabotage happen where the clue would have never been found. Or, in the building of the raft, or, in getting lost in the forest instead of making it to the smashing rocks.
It wouldn't have been at the end. I agree.
It doesn't seem plausible that the mole would have just been like, oh, let me slide the barrel out, because that's very whimsical and it doesn't fall in line with what the production would have prompted them to do. It's like if they fail sort of thing. This last ditch effort, let me push the barrel out, not knowing where the barrels would have been placed or how it would have been built.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, and we're like thinking like players from our own season, because like the mole, obviously Kasi in our season like had a slower start to like sabotage. So you didn't see the obvious signs of sabotage till like the bank mission, where she just goes like starts doing her first like very obvious form of sabotage, and then it like starts building up. So yeah, I didn't think it was that obvious. It seemed like also like Tony and like everyone was like hanging on to that raft, and they're like kind of like you said, the water's deep. It just felt like, but like credit to them, they made that happen. We like epically failed.
Honestly, I don't know how the rafts came together. I thought for sure all of the treasure was gonna go underwater, but somehow they pulled it off.
Michael, shout out to Michael for. I mean, he like went down there and like grabbed that thing, and the thing looked pretty heavy. So like he kind of made the chest happen, right? I mean, yeah,
and I think some people were saying that they were suspicious of him for dropping it on the first go, but honestly it looked heavy. Like it's hard to go down underwater and then pull something else up against the weight of the water. So it seemed genuine to me. It didn't seem like sabotage, but he's still on my radar because we enter into the next mission. Well, actually, before we talk about that, we see that Jen goes home, which is really sad because at this point I'm like, the mole hasn't really sabotaged, in my opinion.
Perhaps. If the mole did sabotage, it would have been in the slingshot group, or it would have been Muna with the phone, or it would have been Muna with the raft, or the directionally. Niche was getting a little lost, I think, in the woods, and Tony was getting pissed off about it with the rock. So like there were a few things, and you had Michael slipping on the sniper hold. They kept showing his foot like slipping and getting his left and right mixed up. But other than that, you didn't have much. And based on our episode 1 edit, the final edit, you don't see any sabotage from Kasi. You don't see anything on screens.
Yeah, exactly. And, right before the quiz, Muna says something to the camera like, this is going to be so hard. And I was like, that literally sounded exactly like Kasi when she, would have these private interviews. And it's, something that's interesting for the viewers that you guys get to see how these people talk on camera. And as a player in the game, you don't see those moments. Like you don't see them in front of the camera going, I'm so nervous. This is going to be so hard. And you're like, this is just bad acting. Like whether it's intentional or not, this is bad acting. Like I saw Kasi's reels and love the girl, but like if I would have watched the show, I would have known, because the way that you speak kind of gives it away. And I've seen this in those private interviews with Muna. She'll say things where she's like, this is gonna be so hard. And it's like, did production prompt her to say that and she's just not saying it very genuinely? Or is she the mole and that's why it seems disingenuous?
Right. To your point, though, like when you're doing these interviews, you're doing them like a few days after, sometimes after the challenge. So you're like kind of like asked to like relive a challenge. And it is a little weird because when you are prompted, they're like, react as if you're in that moment. And like oftentimes in those moments, you're like full of adrenaline. You don't remember necessarily. And like people could be, I can see people like being like so bad at the recount aspect of it that come off as being fake. So it's not like a telltale sign, but I agree with you. Like bad acting could be a sign for sure. Yeah.
And at this point, I'm thinking like, is the mole nervous to sabotage? Because like we really haven't seen much sabotage, but we enter into the next mission. And Sean has this moment on the screen where he goes, I'm nervous. And I'm like, again, it seems so fake. Like, I'm like, you don't seem nervous, because he is nominated to be one of the people scaling down the side. And then he just zips all the way down it. Like,
he says
he's nervous and then just zips all the way down. And I'm like, are you nervous or not? Because it seems like you're totally fine.
Yeah, I agree. I can see the height aspect of it. You know, I'm like, there were definitely like points when we did challenges sometimes where I was like, you know, did you guys test everything that's going on? Like, are we
Am I safe?
Am I safe? And I think that can be a genuine concern for sure. Like that's a pretty like fairly big drop. And we came to learn on our set that like the production, they have a whole team of like safety officers. They like run through these challenges quite literally before we run through them, and they kind of test the course to know what the limits of it are. But yeah, he just zipped right down there. On the other end, you have Melissa, who
genuinely
scared. I believed it. And then she was also like going like very methodically, like slow, but like for some reason, I just knew this was. So like what they did basically structurally is like they took our episode 3 Paradise Cove and made it episode 2 in a repackage, and then they took our episode 2 with our sector challenge and our past refining time. They moved that to episode 3 with the scaling, and so it's like a 2-part challenge. And like I just knew that when they got to like the clue to like Rob, like I just knew that was already gonna like equalize things for teams as it did for us. It's just like, you know, there's a lot more to be done once you're done finding that chair.
So we kind of skipped over the exemption mission, and I want to talk about that for a second because we don't really see the relationship develop between Hannah and Tony. It just kind of, you know, skips from one to the next, and then they're like now in a full-on relationship. We see Hannah in a confessional interview saying, all I have to do is flip my hair, bow my eyelashes, and I know he'll give it to me. And then she's like, Tony, get up. And I'm like, who does this girl think she is? Unless they're in a relationship in which she could say something like that and he's going to listen. And the crazy part about it is he does. He just gets up and I'm like, no, this is not good for Tony. Like that just made him look like
he wasn't into Hannah, like in whatever confessional, but body language, the way he got up, all of it, it's very obvious that in the moment he has the hots for Hannah for sure. 100%. He can deny it all he wants. He wasn't really playing her. But if Hannah was to say, I was completely playing Tony, I completely buy it. Because I think that she's fully capable, after seeing her through a few episodes, of that level of like deception. And also like there's a level of like, you know, physical attraction is just physical attraction, but I think Hannah's also pretty intelligent. So that was interesting. I mean, they both just sat there for a while and then she just commanded him to get up. I wish that both of them, like, you know, I wish he got up earlier, but that was just like drawn out. I'm sure the cast was like livid. You know how like competitive people are out the gate, especially like early on, like they were just like, you guys are making this all about yourselves.
And at this point as well, like it doesn't matter how much money is taken out of the pot as long as some of it is. So even though the highlight of this moment was watching those two interact, what I'm paying attention to is the people who are leaving midway through. So I wrote down in one of my notes that Ryan leaves after 20K is drained. Sean leaves after 15K is drained. And then Muna leaves after $25,000 is drained. And I think that that's right at that midpoint where that's where the mole would be. I don't think the mole would wait. You know, they want to look like they want the exemption, but they don't want to draw everyone's eye to them. So that midpoint is right where I'm looking, which makes me more suspicious of Ryan, Muna, and Sean, and completely takes Hannah off my list in this moment.
Does it? I think for that's yeah, I mean, I agree. My suspicion of Hannah went severely down after she waited so long, and made such a deal of the sabotage. That being said, it's just like it's so weird. Like no one really like throughout the show like has that much of a suspicion on Hannah for whatever reason. Like she sabotages, but like I think they really just see her as like a shrewd player more than they see her as the mole, which I think I agree with. My gut was telling me the same thing at the same time about Hannah.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. And then we see Andy is suspicious of Tony, and then he goes home. So this takes Tony completely off of my list at this moment, but I already didn't really think it was Tony in the first place. Yeah. And we enter into the next mission, which is the towers. Sean, like we said, says that he's scared to go down the side and then zips down it. Melissa's consistent, says she's scared. She is scared. We see a little zoom in on a poker chip and I'm like, oh, is that a hidden clue? Like, is it Melissa? And the mission continues.
Right. Very cool challenge. Shout out to the challenge creators. To scale down buildings like that is an awesome challenge.
I honestly was really jealous watching some of these. I was like, man, like I wish I could do this all over again because the missions looked so cool. But we see that Ryan agrees to a vote to open the clue. And that is something that I noted in my mind because it's a very subtle thing. Like, they're asked, do we want to open the clue? And Ryan goes, yeah, sure. And I'm like, okay.
Subtle.
Very subtle, but she agrees to it. The mole doesn't always have to be the one to make the suggestion. They can just agree when sabotage is, on the table. And then I was watching Sean as well in this moment, and he agrees to the final code, which is incorrect. So the mole would know what the code is. And I think it's interesting that he's like, try it, and encourages Hannah to type in this final code that ends up being incorrect.
Yeah. Hannah also burned two of the guesses though, right? Because her and Tony just like got like into it and they thought that they had figured out these 4 numbers and then they just like burned two of their guesses.
Yeah, which I didn't get that thought process at all. Like I would have never, if anything, I would have placed it like between the space of the time. So I didn't get
they just went back to back, and like we had the same thing. I mean, in our periodic table challenge, we only had 3 attempts, and then the computer would get locked. You know what I mean? So like we were using them sparingly. The other thing is, if they had watched our season, which I feel like a lot of people from this cast had seen our season prior to coming onto this show, then they would have known that the hint is in the like instruction itself from Ari, the way we had that hint, the password in the table. Well, she didn't emphasize it the first time when she said it, so we kind of skipped over it. We were so into like what was happening, but then by the end of it, when she says, well, just remember the password is in the table.
Yeah,
and then that
exactly.
Everybody like what it could be. Sprinted, rip off the periodic table, like it's within the frame. Like it was like that level of thinking. Well, okay, you have everything that you have. Or you have everything that you need. The light shines brightest or something like that. So it involves light, right? And in your bag, you have a flashlight and you have batteries everywhere. And
exactly. And he was like the only one focused on the flashlight. I was so confused by that. Like he's sitting there, he's like, this has got to have something to do with it. And then you see Muna and she's like, why are there batteries everywhere? And I'm like, guys, come on, like put it together. And then Sean goes on this confessional interview and he's like, he says something like, it makes me less trusting of Q. And I'm like, now you're more suspicious to me, Sean, because if you are not trusting of Q, like he's the one that found the flashlight and like was telling everyone to pay attention to it in the first place. What do you mean you're suspicious of him? Like that's such a mole move to say that you're suspicious of someone who's clearly not the mole.
Or is on the right track, right? Like Q was on the right track. He actually made it happen for them. If it weren't for Q, that group doesn't succeed at all.
Exactly. So then this mission ends. And then we are trying to figure out who has a fortune cookie with an exemption and who has a fortune cookie with money in it.
Poker challenge.
And my take on this before this mission even starts is the mole has the money and they're going to try and convince, and not do a very good job making it so that someone gets an exemption. Right?
Maybe. Losing money is in the interest of the mole. I don't think exemptions are as much of a concern for the mole. It's the money aspect, because that's a very like tangible product. Like I made the team lose $20,000 or something like that.
So the production side is they know who the mole is, and they're gonna put the fortune cookie in front of the mole with money. Yeah. So that the mole can be like, I have the money. And then, they get caught, or, they convince that they have whatever they have. And do you know what I'm saying? They allow someone to get an exemption, or they vote for someone who they know has an exemption and, throw it off in that way. But the way to sabotage in this mission is either the mole has the money and they're not very good at convincing that they have the money, allowing the person that has the exemption to win, or they use their votes to vote for people who have an exemption, saying that they thought that they had the money.
100%.
So I'm paying attention to those two things.
I agree with you. And it was similar to us too in our like food eating challenge, where it's like the mole knew where to sit. Like the mole knew who would be getting served the good food and who would be getting served the bad food. And so it all just sort of makes sense. And we know kind of what that's all about. So let's talk about this challenge. And also, like, as a side note, I will say the mole doesn't have to sabotage every mission. This seemed like one of those like elimination ceremony missions that was maybe less consequential, so maybe the mole doesn't have to strike at every mission. I think we learned that. But if they did, I agree with the fact that they would have the money. They would have the money, and they would be a bad actor, and they would lose that money. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So as this mission goes on, we see, it starts out with the 20,000, and Ryan is a terrible liar. Her face turns like beet red, and I'm like, okay. The mole has to be able to lie, right? So this kind of takes her lower on my radar.
Fair.
And then we see Mike, as the exemptions get found out, he's getting happier and happier. And I'm like, I don't think that Mike could be the mole if he was getting happy about these exemptions being found out, because this means that, he's excited about what's to come, and we know that he has the exemption. And so I feel like the mole wouldn't be happy about these exemptions getting found out, because the mole would want, money taken away from the pot. So as I'm watching him smile, I'm like, maybe Mike isn't the mole, because he's too happy about, the fact that money is getting added to the pot. Did you notice that too?
No, okay. I noticed Mike's emotions, but Mike is like such an enigma of a character.
He is.
Shout out to Mike. Like it's very hard to read him as a person. He says it himself. He's just like, I've been so good at like hiding, before he came out, his own sexuality and all that stuff. So he's like had a lifetime of like really being careful with how he represents himself. Honestly, he's a hard read. I agree.
He's a really hard read.
Yeah. Yeah.
He could just be excited about the fact that he's about to, be the only person with an exemption and take money out of the pot because he's the mole.
He's the mole.
Yeah. But I just, from a production standpoint, I'm thinking like watching these interviews, production doesn't usually choose someone who's like excited to be the mole. They choose someone who's like maybe is nervous about being the mole, because if they look like they're always nervous, or they look like they're always a little bit off, then it's hard to tell when they really are sabotaging.
Melissa.
Dude, did I miss that?
Yeah, well, no, that's just the outcome of the challenge, right? Because I equate this to a poker face challenge. She's a poker player. Very sweet from my interactions with her on social media there thus far, but sad to see her go like that, and like sad to see her like lose on the poker game of all games, like the poker face.
I know. Game. Honestly, she did have a really good poker face. Like she didn't really show a lot of emotion ever. And I think that definitely played into her strength. If she would have made it further on, like if she was top 6, top 8, like I would have definitely had her on my radar, because she does have such a good poker face. And I genuinely mean that.
I agree. But great play.
Yeah, agreed. So we see, the next mission,
right?
The cinema mission, whatever you want to call it. But, you know, we have a couple people watching Sean's video, a couple people, well, just Tony watching Hannah's video, people watching Mike, all of the people that as a viewer, you're a little bit suspicious of, except for Ryan.
Except for Ryan.
No one watches Ryan's video. And I think that's so interesting. And then I'm also sitting here thinking, like, now that Sean is exposed as being an undercover cop, like, would production do that? Like, would they allow people to know that he's a good actor and is an undercover cop and has this like secret identity, and then also give him a secret identity? Like, it just seems a little bit too placed.
Maybe. I will also say, let's say we were producers of a show like this. You know that everyone at some point is going to draw some level of suspicion, and that suspicion can also be controlled by, like, you know, you're working with the mole and you realize, oh, there's a lot of heat on you right now. Why don't we just like put you in a position to succeed for a little bit and like draw that suspicion away? Because to overthink in this game is the easiest thing in the entire world. You know what I mean? Like, there is so much suspicion to be had. There's so many theories that can pan out, because if this game was so simple and there was only one person sabotaging, it would be a completely different game. But that's just not the case. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe they play an honest game and maybe they're like, okay, well, if someone's going to ask for Sean's dossier, we're going to just like let them know, you know, what's going on. But I don't remember, in our dossier mission, did someone look at Cassie's? I don't remember.
I did.
You looked at Cassie's?
I looked at...
Well, because that was Paradise Cove. We were talking heavily about Cassie. Remember, we put her on our team because we were like, let's keep her close, because we had no read on Cassie. Yeah. So that's what it was all about. Yeah.
And I looked at everyone's. It was like, you have 5 minutes. You can look through as much as
whatever you want.
But that's what I did. But
right.
But yeah, so, and then I also saw Muna was like so excited. She was like, I would love to be the mole. And I was like, I just feel like production doesn't pick people that are that excited to be the mole. And that made me less suspicious of Muna.
I agree.
So I kind of, you know, knocked her down a notch from that moment on. And then we enter into the next mission, which is this.
Wait, Q goes out too in the dossier mission, because Q doesn't look at like anyone's dossier.
Things. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying, like, remember Q, everybody looked at the dossier except one person, that one person being Q. Right. And it was kind of just like...
Q doesn't watch anyone's video, but to think that other people aren't going to do the same, you're just putting yourself at a disadvantage. So...
And the mole would certainly go look at someone's video because it drops $5,000 from the pot. So, like, even any little doubt, which I didn't have a doubt on Q, to be honest, like, he was kind of like Tony and like Andy. He was in that group, like Niche, where I was just like, there's no way. Like, there's just no way. And that was like the last nail in the coffin. I was like, Q's out as a candidate.
Yeah, he's definitely not the mole. So we've taken, obviously, the people who have been eliminated, you know, Niche and Q are 100% off the list. I think we can also, at this point in these episodes, say Deanna. I mean, her crying over the pot going down during the exemption, sitting in the room. Like, Deanna is just a very obvious no.
Deanna is an obvious no. I agree with you. But I was kind of like low-key just like hoping that like she was such a good actress.
I think she's way too invested.
I don't think so. I think she's too. Like, the moment they arrived at the mansion, she was like in tears. Like, she was like,
I know.
No. And I was like, oh, Deanna, she's so happy to be there.
I want to... Like, I want to go get coffee. I want to hang out with her. She seems so genuine and so sweet.
A web sleuth, you know, like, what a dope like title.
Have you seen the documentary she's on? It's literally, to this day, one of my favorite Netflix documentaries of all time.
No, I'm gonna have to check it out.
You have to watch it. It's so good. Okay. Shout out to Don't F with Cats. It's so good. Okay, so moving on now to the waiter waitress mission.
Yes, very cool. My God, all the paid actors and just the detail.
So good. I do have tea on this mission, but I first want to get your take on, I guess let's start out with, you know, the swap that Sean did, and it just so happened to be the one that cost them money. And he does it right in front of Michael after Michael watches his video.
Yeah. Suspicious. Suspicious. Very sus. The gold dress, right? So he swaps the gold dress out, and Dee kind of like ignores the instruction about the gold dress and is like, well, just like take the woman with the black dress, like, you know, like without the shoulders, and she must be like the doctor, whatever she was supposed to be. But Sean's reasoning is also quite like believable, at least from an audience POV. Like, I know that Mike's on to me. Mike looked at my dossier.
I saw this same sort of tactic on the mountain mission, episode 9 with Cassie. She takes like the ice block and she throws it backwards, and then she's like, I knew Joy was watching me. And it's like, oh, it's too similar. Like, it's too similar. That makes me so sus.
Also, like, undercover cops don't tend to act in very like uncalculated ways, and that almost seemed like a calculated maneuver, because until then he wasn't doing anything obvious. He was staying very under the radar, so it was intentional. It was like pre thought out. And then now you talk about like 50 whatever guests, and he ends up taking the one of the key people who has money without knowing the pertinent information. Very sus is what I thought. Ryan, very sus. Obviously, Ryan does the dumpling.
Dumpling chicken saute swap. Calls out literally all of the money from that mission. And at this point in my mind, I'm like, this is the exact play of Cassie. Gain trust in the beginning and then do things, you know, subtly throughout the entire thing, like suggest opening a clue, or, you know, calling out the wrong ingredient, or, you know, just little things that you can do along the way to just completely fly under the radar. And we also know that Ryan is, you know, she's a volleyball coach. She's like she's a mom. She's got a couple kids. It's like, you know, she's someone automatically that you trust because she's a mother. And I think that this is one of her greatest assets if she is the mole. I mean, she's completely flying under the radar.
You don't notice, and from an editing standpoint, let's just talk from like a general what you see as the viewer. It's like anytime she does sabotage, it's not a point of emphasis.
Yeah, they don't emphasize it at all.
They don't talk about it. Like they just like meander right over the fact that, but they focused on Sean. They focused on Sean doing the switch. They like did the zoom in. They had like video interviews about it. But her, like,
and then she sabotages, and it's only Hannah. Hannah's like, that was suspicious, and then they're like, but Sean. You know, just really emphasizing all of the sabotage.
Yeah, and they don't like have like Hannah's like personal take from the video interview, like the personal interview, like come in and just like spill all the tea about what she saw about Ryan and like talk about how she's like hella sus. None of that made the edit. So from a production standpoint, I'm like, ooh, Ryan. Like,
and then we go to the elimination after this mission, and Ryan looks nervous. Yeah. I'm like, how is she doing this? Like, you can see it visibly on her face. She looks nervous.
Remember Cassie would like furrow her eyebrows. You'd see like a little glisten in her eyes. Like she'd like,
and she would like tap her fingernails like in front of me. Like she would tap stuff. And you didn't see this, and they didn't show it on camera. But on the very final elimination during top 4, there was a candle in front of me. And she pulled the candle over to her side and then grabbed a leaf, like she broke a leaf off of a plant that was in the room and started putting the leaf in the fire and like dipping it in and out. She would like light the leaf on fire, blow it out, and then like dip it back in. And I looked over at her, and this was before we took the quiz. I looked over at her and I was like, what are you doing? And she was like, she said, it was a name for someone who like plays with fire, like likes fire,
pyrotechnic or whatever,
something like that. And she was like, oh, I have da 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 da. And I was like, what's that? And she was like, oh, I play with fire when I'm nervous. And I was like, and at that point, like, I was like, either this girl's psycho or she's the mole. Because I was like, this like does not make any sense at all. But but no,
either
good acting or
so Ryan is nervous. You can the edit kind of makes her out to be someone who like studies the game, I think, generally pretty well. She's like she's always like stressed at the time of elimination. You see it. But I will also say you see like a lack of care like during missions.
Yeah. Like when the money is strange, just no facial expression at all. No facial
expression. So it's a weird, you know, like sus, very sus.
No, Tony gets eliminated. And we hear Tony in an interview say that he's suspicious of both Sean and Michael, but which one did he go for? We don't know, or it could just be editing. Maybe he went for neither of them and he was actually suspicious of Hannah, like he said.
I think there's a line also where Tony like says something like Hannah and him like are in agreement about who they think they are, because like when like Hannah's screen goes green, they like zoom in on Tony's face being like really happy.
Thank goodness.
Confident. He's like, thank God, like we're in, we're
Sound
good.
Familiar?
Yeah, I think you're a fair comparison to Hannah. And I was kind of happy he went home. I think he was kind of being a little bit of a bully in the game.
He was.
And I wasn't like suspicious of him, you know, so I kind of like it when like no one, like someone who like no one's suspicious of just like goes home, like it's done, like let's focus on like what's at issue here. Hannah cries, which is like good acting, I think. I don't know.
I was so sad for Nav. I was like, that's the one person that made me feel normal in this game.
I think we were real friends. If you went home before me, I think I myself would have been emotional about it. It would have sucked. It really would have sucked. And I think it was genuine. I don't know him, Hannah. Hannah was genuine. I don't know. Hannah could have been playing 4D chess, because I just don't see her being hung up on Tony. Like, and then they were like romantic, right? Like you and I were.
Yeah, that's true. We were just friends.
We were really good friends. Like we were really like we trusted each other.
Yeah.
And we were always like we were strategizing. We were doing like high level like conversations about the game.
If longer, we would have figured it out. I'm
for sure. I think we were like one episode away from figuring it out. Like we were on the cusp, and then we would have written it home. And we always talked about it. We were like, we want to be in the final 3. We won't sabotage.
May the best man win.
May the best man win. Best quiz answers. Let's go. Best timing. Let's go. Hey, maybe we'll get another shot one day.
I don't know if I skipped over the cargo mission or if the cargo mission was next.
I think it happens after, right? So
yeah.
Tony's not part of the cargo mission. I remember Tony's not part of it.
Okay, so we think that he either voted for Sean or Michael, and they allude to him voting for Hannah, but I don't think that that's the case. But he goes home either way.
There's no way. Listen, the little T on that is that even like the way the edit in our show makes it seem like I went out on Avery. 100% not the case. It's something that I had to record months after filming, and it was I was happy to do it because it makes for better TV and better content. And I think maybe something similar. They're like, Tony, like we need you to throw a little bit of shade on Hannah, but I don't think Tony was suspicious of Hannah.
Yeah,
and I wasn't suspicious of you. So you know,
I know that made me look more suspicious to the viewer, and I think that that's what this is doing right now. And you know, I'm not saying that it's 100% not Hannah. I'm not currently suspicious of her because I feel like I literally lived her story. Like we have the same
there's
story.
similarities for sure.
And so that's why I'm not suspicious of her. But other people might be, just because, you know, they were close and Tony went home. So we enter into the cargo mission, and the 3 people that everyone thinks are the most suspicious are Muna, Michael, and Sean, which I think is interesting because as we've seen in our season, the people who everyone thinks, you know, are the most suspicious, and these are the genuine quiz answers, are usually not the mole. And so this makes me rethink, you know, if everyone's thinking the same thing as me, I'm probably off. Like I'm probably wrong. And so we see all of the players, you know, try and say who they think is the most suspicious, and everyone is saying Muna. And you see Muna smile. And after Muna smiles, I'm like, she's so happy that everyone thinks it's her. And this also is a clear indicator that as a group consensus, people are the most suspicious of Michael and Sean.
And the fact that Muna was suggests to me that off camera, they got to know Muna based on her personality. Whatever it was, it prompted at least a decent amount of people to go for Muna. And that tells me maybe she's not the mole, because even away from challenges, even in their downtime, even when they're filming their little vlogs or they're doing their day in the life type content, Muna could have just given off enough energy to be so suspicious. And I don't think the mole does that. So that's, in addition to what you just said, I think that's what really made me feel like, okay, Muna's a good player and I'm like rooting for her, but my suspicion on Muna went down. Michael, I'll say, I just can't figure Michael out. So I don't know. But yeah, everyone's on to Michael.
is everyone on the trail of the mole that fast? Like maybe it is someone like Ryan who's flying so low under the radar.
Edit doesn't even show her that much. Like that's just how it is, and that's how it was for Kasi. Cassie's edit like really rises up in like the second half of the series. So yeah, I agree with you. Ryan stays sus. Mike stays sus. Sean could be a double bluff. Oh. Anyway.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that Sean was also he was just trying way too hard to look suspicious. Like in the cargo mission, you know, they're loading up all of the money onto the crates, and it just seems like he's just trying so hard to look suspicious. And I'm like, only someone who's trying really hard to just play the game would be that blatantly obvious, you know?
I think so. Also, like, Sean is not someone who you would think is like going to come off to everyone as a trustworthy person, right?
Yeah.
Like by way of like his whole like look and feel, his way of talking, his backstory, which becomes revealed to everybody. He's just not that person that everybody like would naturally trust. And I feel like the mole is typically someone who's like either like super like quiet as a personality or like at least very trustworthy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. It drew my suspicion down on Sean, is what I would say.
Agreed. Yeah. Right. So it's revealed that everyone's most suspicious of Michael, and Michael's actually very happy about that. And not only that, but you know, he's excited about the amount of money that was put into his crate, which, you know, the mole doesn't need to take all of the money. The doubler didn't get into Michael's crate.
No.
So that's nice. And the fact that he is so excited about this makes me think he could be the mole as well. Because like I said, all the mole needs to do is make sure that the most money is not in their crate.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't want to be the most suspicious. And then there was like a move or something, like someone like moved a crate or something toward the end. I don't remember specifically. Into Sean's, right? And people are like, and I agree, actually, whoever was like talking, maybe Niche or someone was like commenting on that. And I was just like, it makes sense. Like, who's moving the crate into the third thing? Why not take a 50-50 shot? At this point, it was pretty obvious that Sean was probably not the most voted.
Yeah.
Weird, suspicious, but could just be an attention grab. So,
but I that most people didn't think that Muna was suspicious at all, though. Like, I think the majority of people went for Michael or Sean. Michael or Sean, because, Sean, you know, everyone likes to claim out loud the opposite of what they're thinking.
Right, and that's how movie gets. Right.
Yeah, exactly. What I don't think people took into account is, you know, the fact that most of them were actually suspicious of Michael. So I think they were thinking, let's look, you know, suspicious, not give my cards away. But it's revealed in the end anyways, and now all of them just look like liars.
And I think Niche was like pissed off, I think, because he thought I think he might have like correctly said who he was going for in a good-hearted effort. I think it was like Michael or something. And then he was like, what the like, what's going on here? Like, why is everybody lying? Like, you know, like when the truck comes back and they see that it's like, you know, who was it? It was like Michael. So they only got like the 19.5 or whatever.
Yeah. But I mean, still like, that's still really good. There was a lot of money to be made, which I don't think we ever had a mission that was over $30,000. Okay, so the last thing that I wrote down in my notes is that if most people think that the mole is Michael, then it's likely not Michael, because production is very good at steering people away from who the mole really is. And if we see that everyone is suspicious of one person, it's usually because production does a lot of work behind the scenes to make people suspicious of who it isn't, you know? But maybe that is the double bluff.
Maybe it's a double bluff. It always could be. Not all seasons have to play out the same way.
Yeah.
100%. And it could be like, you know, Michael was just minding his own business, but for whatever reason and for reasons that production might not even be able to control, it's like everyone gets suspicious of him, and then all of a sudden they have to work kind of backwards and reverse engineer the suspicion and like lower it. Because if you were suspicious of Michael, and a lot of people were suspicious of Michael, and no one really goes home on voting for Michael, then it could be possible that a bunch of people are just on to the mole and then later like switch theories, but they were surviving in the game mostly in part by giving heat to Michael's.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Is another exemption in which the pot can be drained. Once again, these people I
Oh
thought I
god.
was mad at Joy for taking 25,000, but watching their pot drain to zero like twice, basically.
What an awesome challenge. I like it was like obviously it's meant to like build trust too. Like what do they do? Like it's like the first one, it's like obviously no one's gonna bid on like one question or something. Was it a correction or something? Or maybe the
Yeah.
second one was a correction. The first one was even something even simpler than that. And then the third one
So
obviously being
dossiers.
yeah, it was like dossier, then correction, then exemption. Right, makes sense. And like
Yeah.
obviously they know people are gonna go for the exemption, right? And I think if you and I were in the room, we would have known that people went for the exemption. When we did the Paradise Cove bidding, I bid a certain amount for sure. And I think almost every single person bid a certain amount for sure. But we
Yeah.
understood that that number was relative to like $28,000 or something. So like that's how much we had to play with. I think I put down like 8,000 or like 10,000. Like I wasn't willing to go all the way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
obviously
And
someone was, right?
the thing is, I know that everyone was holding out waiting for the exemption, but knowing that people were holding out waiting for the exemption, I would have bid like a low number on a correction because I think that that's just, I mean, it helps you stay in the game and
Yeah.
it's just suspicious enough to make it look like you're desperate to stay, take some
Yeah.
money out of the pot without making people angry at you, and then
Mhm.
also, possibly secure your stay in for the next round.
Very interesting that you say that. I agree with you 100%. When I was
Yeah.
watching that and I was like, wait a minute, no one even put down like the Price is Right, like a few dollars on trying to get like a correction. It's
Yeah.
savage. And I was actually surprised the mole didn't act there. Because I was looking like when that happened, I was like, someone has to do something here. Unless they don't value the correction and they don't believe in like the integrity of the quiz or whatever, like whatever they're questioning, because a question can very much so save you, as we knew, and serve as an exemption in itself of rights. And like
Yeah.
weird that no one goes for it. Very weird.
Well, I think we didn't see a lot of the conversation that happened and they kind of came to a group consensus of like, no one's going for this, right? Like, so I think possibly people were scared of getting called out in that moment, knowing that everyone was going to bid for exemption. But like, for me, I would have been like, yeah, no, like I definitely won't go for this one. And then I would have been like, I'm sorry, guys. Like, I just really want to be here another night. And it would be the perfect, like, subtle sabotage. It would give me data points for other people. It would possibly save me if I was on the wrong track of who the mole is. Like, I absolutely would have bid over that correction, and no one
Even
did.
if you're not the mole, it draws suspicion on yourself, which can save you in the game. So not only would you get a correction, it would draw some more suspicion on you, which could obviously throw someone off and then keep you in the game. But okay, we get to the exemption.
Yes. But we don't see who takes the exemption. But here's my take. Whoever it was is 100%, without a doubt, absolutely not the mole. Because the mole doesn't do crazy of things. As we saw, Joy was not the mole. So all the mole has to do is make sure that other people are bidding and contribute to making it look like they want the exemption without, they can just let everyone do what they're going to do.
Bidding any amount is sabotage, right? So bidding literally any amount is sabotage and it qualifies as a data point. I agree with you. Whoever bid literally the whole pot, $59,500, is not the mole. And interested to see who that is. Obviously, there was in the back, the boys were talking about how important the exemption was, right? Like Sean was like vocal about it. He's like, yeah, I'd go for the exemption. And then like Nish was like, yeah, like the exemption, I feel you. Like the exemption is the exemption. And then the girls up front were like quiet. Like you see Ryan like expressionless.
Yeah, and Hannah turns around and she's like, let's just keep it low, guys. Okay, like agreed. And everyone's like, yeah. And then they bid the whole pot.
I bet you Hannah actually bet, and I bet like I know someone bet the whole pot, but I know for a fact that a bunch of people must have bet on some money, even close to the full pot. Like I can see someone putting down like 30 grand, like
50.
50 grand. So like I don't think it was like a one-sided, like one person bets it all. Like someone definitely bets some big money. I think from Hannah's reaction, from that shock, the initial, that's all you get to see. It's like maybe Hannah put a significant amount of money, but then she realized, oh my God, someone went for it all.
She goes, I know I have to do something big here.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking Hannah went like 50K.
50K and then still lost. And hence her reaction is just like mouth open, like, you know. And then you know she's gonna like choose to be like so pissed about it to whoever like bid the whole pot, but like you know, like
yeah, exactly. People get like they're mad in the moment, but they do get over it because it's a game.
It was hard to tell from the edit. Yeah.
See this next release, episode 6 through 8, will come out on Thursday.
Yes.
That is our full breakdown analysis, and I think to close this out, we should say who our top suspicion is personally. Pranav, you go first.
Can we do like a boy and a girl type situation? My number one boy, my number one girl. I want to say my number one pick right now as a guy is like Michael still, because I just don't believe it's any of the other guys. It just can't be like Q. It can't, like Sean has gone down on my radar. And like, I don't believe it to be any of the other guys. Like Andy's gone, Tony's gone. So like out of the guys, like Michael's still like the enigma. He could be like that double bluff type player. Girls, and so like, Hannah's like fallen lower. I think she's just scheming the game. I just don't think that she's the mole. I want Muna to be the mole.
She would be an amazing.
I want her to be mole so bad. Like she would be such an amazing mole. And then obviously like what you're saying about Ryan, like makes sense. Like even our conversation, like Ryan, like I mean, like the edit wise, like Ryan, like no one's talking about her, no one's showing her. It adds up. Yeah. What about you? I mean, anybody else other than Ryan? I feel like you're pretty dead set on Ryan.
Yeah, I think like after the first 5, and I know things will probably change when 6 through 8 come out, but after the first 5, I'm like dead set. I'm locked in. I'm trying not to get tunnel vision though. You know, my top pick is Ryan, and then in close second is Sean and Michael, with honestly like one isn't above the other at this point. Like those two are just like, those are my second two. And then like I have a tiny like hope that it's Muna.
Yeah.
But and a very tiny vision that it could be. It's like I hope that she's the mole, because she would be a fantastic mole. But
what a play that would be if Muna were the mole. What a play. But that just goes to show you she's a very likable personality. I think we have quite a few really, really awesome personalities. I can't wait for some people from our cast and some people from their cast to kind of like get together, even on like these sort of like things. Talk to the fans, talk to each other. I saw that you recently posted on Instagram the comparisons of characters. And I think that's like an interesting conversation, and it was a very interesting like graphic. Like I think you said you agreed with it. I definitely agree with it. I think there's only a few characters that don't have like their like a real like counterpart from season to season, but like obviously you said, you know, you see your gameplay match Hannah's, you and what was it, like Q and Dom are
Q
similar.
and Dom, very similar.
Casey and Ryan, I mean, come on, the same energy. They're giving off the same energy.
And what people don't know is that Tony and Will, like in person, are so similar. Like I saw some comments on there that, you know, they were saying like, no, Tony and Will, like Will's my guy, but it's like, y'all don't know. They are so similar in like demeanor, attributes, like the way they speak, like they're very similar people.
I see it. I think with Nish and I think the more so the comparison is the fact that we're Indian. But like I think possible. Like there's still like some like similarities. So like if I had to pick a player that I'm like maybe most similar to, okay, it's Nish. But Sandy and Melissa, Sandy and Melissa are so good. That makes sense. I think like Joy probably doesn't have a match, though. I do kind of think that Joy and like Kasi, if you were to kind of like combine elements of them, you get like a Muna.
It's like the way that Muna speaks on camera is the same as Kasi, but then the way that she plays the game is the same as Joy.
More like Joy. Yeah, interesting.
Agreed.
Jose, kind of like the comic element is similar to Q, but then like Q obviously has a lot of similarities to Dom. Egg and Greg and Michael as like enigmas, and like for sure, like Greg was a hard read too.
Yeah, Greg was a hard read for the viewers, and Michael is a hard read for viewers as well. So they're very similar in that aspect.
It's interesting parallels, you know. So in the first quiz, you see a lot of people playing majorities, which is actually an interesting thing. For us, I'm confident that wasn't happening with everybody. Very few of us. It was me and you, and then later I roomed with Will. So unfortunately for me, and to my own detriment, I taught Will that sort of strategy, and then we started running through it because he was my roommate, and could have been a bad move. So I apologize, Aves. I shouldn't have taught him my strategy on the quiz, but
well, it doesn't matter because he was sneaking out of his room anyways and cheating. So no one knows that, but if they didn't, now they do. That's tea from season 1. Wish we had a genuine winner, but our winner cheated. So and it's cool to see them interact. It also seems like the cast is really gelling, like not in the sense of like them all being friends, but like they gel as in like they're so different, and you still see these moments of like them getting along and the high fives, the camaraderie. Like it seems like they're actually genuinely interested in being kind towards each other. And I can say like we didn't have a lot of that on our season. Like it was very combative, I think. And even after the show released, it's very cliquey and combative, but it is
what it is. Yeah, we just had a different little, you know, we had a hyper competitive cast, I think.
Yeah.
Hyper competitive. Willing to do anything to win kind of cast. You know, that results in some burn bridges. But hey, credit to us. I think we remain the only real alliance through the 2 seasons. Genuinely, and I think that makes for some great commentary. So yeah, this is episode 1. Let's close episode 1 out. And when did you say the next batch comes out? Thursday, right?
Yeah, Thursday. We're gonna binge watch it. We'll be giving you guys our commentary on that as well. And let us know. Come over to our social media, or even just you know, send us a DM. Who do you think the mole is?
Not just that. Avery and I have started. I've started streaming and hopping on her streams with the gaming aspect of it all. So whenever you see her live, like go join in. I'm going to try to be on as many streams as possible. We're on there all the time. We're just talking the tea. We're just having a good time.
Playing Call of Duty for those of you guys that game.
Yeah. All right. We'll talk soon.
Bye. And this has been Reality Check. And you've been reality checked.
That reality checks out. That is reality